All right, guys, welcome to your first drawing tutorial here. So what's going to happen with this class is we are going to do a progression of tutorials, and then at some point in time, you're going to put all of these together and use them to create something. This is the first one. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking a look at drawing the human eye. Now, this is by no means a one-size-fits-all tutorial, as we all have different eyeballs. So, people's eyes will vary in shape, size, color, all sorts of things. But this is just going to kind of be a basic kind of overall view of the eye, and I don't want to just show you how to draw the eye. I want to show you how to do the eye in a couple different styles. Sorry, my cat's choosing to be kind of noisy right now. So I'll show you a couple different styles, some different things that you can kind of build off and use, hopefully. And then I'll kind of talk a little bit about what I'm expecting from you for this week's assignment. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you what not to do, because I see a lot of this oftentimes when people are drawing eyes and they draw just kind of these football eyes and they end up kind of looking crazy. So what we get a lot of times when someone's going to draw an eye is they just kind of do something like this, and then they do something like this, and then they just put this floating iris in here, and then they'll color this thing in, and then they'll do something like this that looks like bicycle spokes, and then I see these crazy eyelashes and things like this. So this is like a very, amateurish eye, and then, for an eyebrow, they'll just kind of go crazy here and do something like this. So I'll see something like this, all right? And we do not want that, so we're gonna just get rid of that guy. So let's talk a little bit about what kind of makes an eye look like an eye. And really the best way to do this is to probably just use your own eye as reference. And here, I'll even use a pen so we can kind of see this a little bit better. And I can see my last eye on that paper. So it's probably best if you just use your own eye for reference. And you can do this one of two ways. You can sit in front of a mirror, or you can grab your phone and you can just, flip it around on the selfie mode and just stare at your own eye. If you're lucky enough to have someone around to volunteer to pose for you, then you can get them to pose for you. But otherwise, you might be just kind of stuck using your own eye for a reference, and that's fine. So here's what I want to look at first. I want to look at eye shapes. Because unlike our football eye, we don't have just like these perfectly oval eyes. Typically what happens with an eye is we get some angles and some things happening. So I always start with the top. And the thing that you guys have to remember is, don't be afraid to make angles and straight lines when you're drawing organic things. Just because something's in the body doesn't mean that it can't have angles, it can't have sharp lines. So typically when I'm doing an eye, I'll make the top part using 3 lines. I have one here, and then I get an eye here, or a line here, and then I get sort of a rounded one here. And then for the bottom one, typically what we have is we have something that kind of mimics the top one, but it flattens out a little bit. It's a little bit rounder. So we have this little thing here in the center of our eye, not the center, but the corner of our eye. And then we'll get sort of this little loop, this little curve line that comes here. So already my eye shape here is starting to look a lot better than my football eye. So that's good. Another thing that I see often with young artists is that, just like how I showed you in our crazy looking eye, how we just draw the iris sitting in the center of the eye, when you look at your eye or you look at someone else's eye, it's very rare that you can see that entire colored part. Typically what happens is it gets cut off on the top or the bottom, or sometimes both. So it's oftentimes much larger than you think. So it is a circle, but it's a circle that has either the top or the bottom cut off. So it's actually gonna look something like this. And if you look in the mirror right now, you're gonna see in your eye, unless you open your eye up really, really large, you're not gonna be able to see that entire color part. So you're gonna have something like that. When we do the pupil, the big thing that I usually see, the big mistake, is I usually see these tiny little beady pupils in the middle. And unless you're staring straight into the sun, your pupil's not gonna look like that. When you do a really small little pupil like that, it's gonna just kind of make you look crazy. So it's always good to kind of make that pupil a little bit bigger. And oftentimes you'll see, you know, that glare of light in the pupil. So what you can do is you can even leave out a little section of that pupil like that, and then that gives you kind of that nice little look of an eye. Now we do have all kinds of little things happening inside of the iris. That's the colored part. And there's lots of things that you can do. There's lots of things that you can play with to get some neat effects. If we do kind of that bicycle spoke line work that comes out, you can play with that, but you don't want them to be completely uniform. You don't want them to, you know, all be the same. You can kind of do some heavier spots. You can do some lighter spots. It doesn't even have to go all the way around, and you can do something like that, and it creates a neat effect. Eyelashes are another thing. So in our little crazy eye, we saw those eyelashes that all kind of were very uniform, the same size and shape, and they all sort of radiated out from the center. But that's not how eyelashes go. Your eyelashes are always heaviest out at the outside edge of your eye. So we're looking at this eye, like this right here would be where your nose is. So this is the outside edge of this eye. So when I'm doing eyelashes on here, typically what I'll do, and we all have eyelashes, boys and girls. This isn't specific to one or the other. But what I'll do is I'll usually thicken up this top line a little bit, especially out towards the edge here, because that's where your eyelashes are the biggest. And then your eyelashes, they don't stick straight out. They have sort of this curve to them. So you can start just curving them away, and they shouldn't be the same length. They shouldn't all be the same distance. What you should do here is you should do something that I like to just refer to as controlled scribbling. And you're just sort of making these little marks, and some of them are heavier, some of them are lighter, and they're all just sort of flipping out from that top line there. And then maybe you have a couple as you come in here towards the center of your face, that inner part of your eye, but most of your eyelashes are gonna exist on that outside edge. And the top is always a little bit heavier than the bottom. On the bottom, you'll have maybe like a few here and there, but they're a little bit lighter, a little bit further spaced apart. And that's just how our eyes are made. Okay, so we have something like that there for the eye. Now, before we're done, there's a couple other little things. Eyelids. A lot of times when you look into the mirror at your eye, you will see some sort of crease above your eye, depending, I guess, on, you know, your eye shape or how open or closed your eye is. But a lot of times we'll see some sort of like little crease above our eye. That's our eyelid. And then of course our eyebrow. So we all have different shaped eyebrows. They're all different sizes. The important thing when drawing an eyebrow is that you make your little sketch lines in the direction of the hairs of your eyebrow. So if I have an eyebrow that's starting over here, I want to make all of these lines traveling in the direction of the hair of that eyebrow. So that's going to kind of create the illusion of hair. I'm just doing these quick little strokes here to get the eyebrow shaped. And I can just shape that eyebrow just by putting more marks where I want the thicker part and less marks where I want the thinner part. And just like that, I get a nice little eyeball drawn. Now, this is just one style of many, many different styles of eyes that we can draw. This is kind of a more of a realistic looking eye. You know, and if I wanted to, I could go in and I could add a little bit of shading here and there. I'm using a pen, so it's a little bit harder to round this thing out, but there's still lots of fun things you can do with it. But this is more of a realistic view of an eye. Now I do want to take a quick look here at drawing a profile of an eye as well. So that's kind of straight on. If I wanted to do something that was, say from the side, because our eye definitely changes shape significantly when we look at it from the side. What I would have is I would have something like this. And this might be hard to use your own eye for this. You could take a picture, or you could even look up a picture online. But if I'm doing an eye on the side, I start with the eyeball itself, which is a curve, because you know, the eye is, you have like, your eyeball is like, you know, it's a circle. So you have like this eyeball thing, and it's like something like this, and then it sits inside of your eye socket where like your lid kind of drapes over top of it and all that stuff. So when I'm drawing it from the side, it definitely is a curve like this, and the eyelid kind of wraps around that eye. So it gets something like this. So it gets something like this, and then the bottom one comes down maybe like this. And then maybe I just see part of the iris here. Again, I never see the entire iris. I mean, unless my eyes are bugging out of my head. But I get maybe something that looks like this. And then for our eyelashes here, because it's from the side, we can see these eyelashes kind of sticking out with this little like swoop that way. And then actually as they come down to the side here, they almost kind of fold over. And then same thing down here, we can get these eyelashes kind of sticking off the bottom. Those are kind of big eyelashes, but that's okay. And then same thing, I get this crease, and then I would have like an eyebrow. That might be something like this. So that's like a nice side view of an eye. Now, like I said, there's lots of different ways to draw eyes. There's lots of different styles. And play around with this, because sometimes using these really exaggerated styles help you understand the anatomy of the eye a little bit better. So for instance, if you wanted to do something maybe in like anime style, because anime is kind of cool because it really exaggerates features. And eyes especially. So in this case, you know, I mean, there's a number of different ways that we can do anime eyes. But, you know, you still have some basic similarities here. You're still gonna have some angles and some lines, and things maybe won't be exactly circular or oval, but maybe you get something like this. And then maybe we get a great big eyeball like this. And then when we're doing our eyelashes, they get a little bit more cartoony. But we're still not forgetting the things that we talked about with the big eye. Oh, I kind of lost you here. Let me do this. There we go. Now you can see that a little bit better. So don't forget what we talked about with the big eye. You don't want things to be uniform. I'm making these funny eyelashes, but they're not equally spaced. One's maybe a little bit longer than the other. Things should never be completely uniform when you're drawing the human body, because it's never uniform. There's always little differences here and there. And then maybe I get something like this. And then they like to do all kinds of like shading and stuff in the eye, which is cool. Maybe it's something like this and something like this. And again, I'm using pen here, so I'm a little limited with how I can shade. But there's like a million different ways you could do this. You could do maybe something like this. And again, I'm playing with like the angles of the eye. Okay, so, you know, lots of different ways. And what you see with these eyes is they're kind of taking this basic thing that we talked about and they're just exaggerating it, making things bigger, they're stretching things out. It's kind of important that you learn the foundations first, and then you can kind of begin to exaggerate and play with things. You know, another example is we can kind of look at comic book eyes, which again, comic books are just, they take kind of naturalistic looking anatomy and they just exaggerate things. You know, you often see that with superheroes and, you know, how jacked they are, or, you know, they just kind of play with body types. So they do the same thing with facial features. So if we wanted to do like an eye, maybe we take this same eye that we started with, but we can kind of play with it a little bit. So if I wanted to make it maybe a little bit evil or angry looking, I narrow that out a whole lot and I give it a lot sharper angles. So maybe I take that kind of same thing and I just sort of play with these shapes and I sharpen them up a little bit, make them a little bit pointier, a little bit more narrow. And I'm doing this like kind of same thing I have up there with my eye. I'm just sort of playing around with some things a little bit. Maybe I take that eyebrow and I make it look kind of mean. So that's something like that. Or maybe I want it to be like a little bit more feminine. And I take that same basic shape, but maybe I kind of soften everything in it. So maybe the angles aren't quite as hard. Maybe I kind of round it a little bit. And then maybe I really play with these eyelashes. So I really darken in where the eyelashes are going to be here as a foundation. And then I can really kind of exaggerate those eyelashes. So I get something like this. And I thin out the eyebrow here. I get like something like this. So, you know, there's lots of different ways that you can play around with this. You know, and also consider what the eye's doing. Maybe it's not wide open, and in a lot of these, they're, you know, very wide open eyes, but, you know, maybe you have an eye that's partially closed. So that it's like, you know, kind of more something like this. And then you only see like just a tiny little bit of that pupil and iris, and you have kind of like a sleepy eye here. So it's something like this, and then, you know, the eyebrow would be up here. It's all kinds of different things you can do. But what I would like from you guys is I would like to see your artist study of the eye. So this is pretty much an artist study. All it is it's just a page with a lot of sketches of the same thing, but just different styles, different angles, anything that you can find that might help you kind of understand how to draw it a little bit better, how to do this particular piece of anatomy a little bit better. So this is what I'm looking for you guys, or looking for from you guys is I want you to have an artist study of the eye, and I want you to take a picture of it, and I want you to turn it into me. That's gonna be your assignment for this week. And all it really, an artist study is just a fancy way of saying a page that has lots of sketches of the eye. You're welcome to use any medium you like. I ended up just using, just a regular ballpoint pen. You can combine things, so I could take a pencil and I could go in and I could really start adding some shading on here to add some depth if I wanted to. A lot of times it's really fun to play around with different mediums to combine things. You can get some really cool effects. But I mean, I could go in and start using some pencil to get some really neat things happening here with these. I could use it for a lot of this shading, and it's gonna start to make things kind of look rounded and cool. So I'd like to see your artist study of the eye. Now you can use your own eye, you can use someone else's eye, you can just go online and you can look up some pictures. Sometimes that's the most helpful way to do it. But I'd like to see you take a crack at doing something a little bit more realistic and then playing around with some exaggerations of the eye, whether it be, comic book versions or anime versions or just even cartoon versions. You can look at any cartoon and you're gonna see very different ways that they draw eyes. You have the classic Simpsons eyes where they just kind of put these two eyes together and then, do something like this. So, I mean, there's all kinds of different things that you can do. But I'd definitely like to see you take a crack at a couple of different styles, really play around with it and try it from a few different angles too. Try some straight on, maybe try some profile things, and just see what happens. Give it your all. Take your time with it, but have fun. Again, these are all just a bunch of sketches, so they don't have to be like these super polished drawings. Once you have that all done, I'll have a little section in Canvas for you to upload this. It'll just be under the assignment for this week, and that'll be it. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in here. Start checking out some eyeballs and get cracking. All right, thanks, guys.